Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Hands-On channel. Today I want to talk to you about something besides all the doom and gloom stuff. In fact, this thing actually helps me stay out of depression when we're going through all these hard times, the continuous erosion of our rights, all that, on and on and on, all that depressing stuff that's going on in the mainstream news. I wanted to talk to you about something that's it's really been therapy to me over the years. And it started out, back in like 92, 93, when I first started getting into cars and stuff. And what is it? It's horsepower, it's torque, it's burning rubber, it's going fast, making, just feeling like you've been shot out of a cannon or something like that, right? And I've always loved that. And of course, there's obviously a time and a place for it, and years ago I made attempts to go down to our local drag strip and run my old Monte Carlo, but it just didn't work out that day. They were closed or whatever, so that never got fulfilled. But you better believe it, I had that thing it had a pretty good hole shot for a big lead sled car with a 350 and a 4-barrel, and I could tune that thing really well, and I just fell in love with it. The sounds that it made when it burned rubber and things like that. Well, even back in the 90s, I quickly realized that, high-speed performance parts and big engines and, lightweight racing parts were very expensive, and they broke a lot and stuff like that. And, I didn't have the money. And then shortly after high school, I married my high school sweetheart, although we didn't go to the same high school. It's a long story. We'll talk about that another time. But this is about my love affair with motorcycles. So I got my first motorcycle. I'm going to say it was either 93, late 93 or early 94. I graduated in 1994 from high school. And I know that I rode that bike either my junior year or my senior year. I can't quite remember, but at one time I had the Monte Carlo and my first motorcycle that was legitimately, titled and tagged street bike. It was a 1981 KZ 650 CSR. And I'm not sure what the CSR stood for, but it was slightly different than just the plain KZ 650, and it was a perfect bike for me at that time in my life. It was mainly I used it for just riding around town. I probably wouldn't have wanted to go do an iron butt challenge on that motorcycle, although it could have been done. It would have been less comfortable than some of the more modern cruiser style motorcycles for that purpose. But for what I needed it for, learning about the fundamentals of riding and things like that, it was a lightweight enough bike that if it fell over on its side, I could pick it up myself. The thing was rated for 63 horsepower, and that was more than enough for a 16-year-old kid that was in love with horsepower, raw horsepower. It's a wonder. There was a while there where I had points on my record and stuff like that because I just couldn't stop pushing the gas pedal or twisting the throttle. I'm so addicted to it. It's one of the few things in my life that even today, when like Radar Love or a kick-ass old AC/DC song comes on and I'm driving my Suburban even or my truck, I'll look down and suddenly I'm going like 15 over the speed limit or something. So you have to slow down, hit the cruise control, otherwise you'll have a bunch of points on your record. So don't do that. Don't be like me. Go out and do it in a safe place and stuff like that. But yeah, when I was a kid, we were riding a lot around town and things like that. And I was one of the few people in school that actually had a street bike that was tagged and legit and all that, and insurance on it and all that. So I rode it back and forth to school, and that was a lot of fun. The problem was one day I was coming home from my girlfriend's house, which she's now my wife, and I wrecked it in the rain. I wasn't experienced riding in the rain, and the bike had a problem. It had the back brake would stick. It was an old drum style back brake, and sometimes it would stick, so I tried not to use it very much because otherwise you had to get off the bike and reach back there and undo the drum brake. It probably just needed some lubrication and cleaning, but I wasn't as mechanically minded back then, and I just squirt a little lube on it and it would work for a while. Well, on the way home from her house one day, it had rained and I was wearing shorts and tennis shoes and I had a helmet on, but no gloves, just a t-shirt. I might have even been wearing like a tank top type t-shirt because it was the middle of the summer. I hit a puddle of water and hit the front brake a little too hard, and suddenly the bike, bam, slammed down on the ground, and I slid like, what seemed like forever. But in hindsight, it wasn't that bad. I got some minor road rash, didn't break any bones. The headlight was broken, had some road rash on the cases, on one of the cases on the side, because it stayed on the one side. I literally got flung down like that on one side, and the bike just slid, and I got away from it, so I wasn't too banged up or anything. But it did scare me a little bit because that was the first time that had happened. And I started thinking, man, that doesn't happen in my Monte Carlo. Even if somebody did hit me or if I spin out, I don't slide down the road. So I fixed the bike. It took me like half the summer though, because finding parts on older Japanese motorcycles back in those days was damn near impossible. There was no eBay, or there was like Auto Trader, and sometimes you could find like a parts bike and get parts off of that, but usually people didn't want you to pick it over. They wanted you to buy the whole thing. And again, I was a kid on a budget, so I went down to a local motorcycle shop, bought the parts that I needed, like the drag bars were bent and the headlight bucket and things like that. I finally sourced it after about half the summer, and I healed up and rode the bike. And the problem was the handlebars were like tweaked. Even though I'd put new bars on it, that wreck apparently tweaked the front end. And I didn't know you could just go over to a tree and, bang it into a tree or massage it back straight. I didn't know that back in those days. And so I was kind of freaked out by that because the bike never really tracked straight with the handlebars in line, and it felt funny to ride it. So I ended up selling that bike. I sold it for a profit though. That bike was one of the best deals I ever got on a motorcycle. Now keep in mind, this is like 1993 or 94, but I paid $1 a cube for it, 650 bucks. So that was one of my best deals, and I think I sold it for like 800, 850, something like that. And hopefully that bike's still out there. Hopefully someone else with a little more experience than me picked it up and was like, oh yeah, I can straighten this out, this alignment issue really easily. So I went a while after that without a motorcycle, and those were dark days, man. I'm not going to lie to you. The Monte Carlo was great. It had plenty of hole shot power and stuff, but I really missed that power band that you can only get from laying down on a motorcycle, like with an inline 4-cylinder like that. So after that, my second bike was a 1983 Honda CB 700 SC, and that was the Nighthawk S, not the standard Nighthawk. It was the cool looking racier, it looked more hot rod than the other Nighthawks in the lineup. And that bike made 80 horsepower, and it was at a 6-speed. That was something I really loved. So if you're out shopping for a motorcycle, look for something with a 6-speed, a 6th gear, because you'll get out there on the highway inevitably and you'll be like, man, I just wish I had one more gear. It happens with every 5-speed I own, including all of my current bikes. Even the Harley, I sometimes look for a 6th gear, and it's not on my bike. So that 83 Nighthawk, it was a beautiful machine, and I'll put a picture in here. I've got a couple of pictures, one picture that I'm sure of, from when my little girl was just a baby, and my wife wanted me to put her up on the seat there and get a picture of me and her on the bike or whatever. And anyways, that's the only picture I've got of that bike. But that was back in the days before digital cameras and all that. So we actually had to either buy the disposable cameras or buy a roll of film. And as usual, I was always out of that kind of stuff. So didn't take many pictures of that bike. It was a beautiful machine. Ran really good. Probably, yeah, it was probably the first time I'd ever been over 100 miles an hour on a motorcycle. Of course, this was on a safe place, closed course and all that stuff, all legal beagle, but that bike would do 120 miles an hour all day long because it had the 6-speed, and it was good. You could lay down on it good enough. You were in a neutral enough riding position that you didn't feel like you were on a modern crotch rocket, like you're laying over the tank. You were still up pretty neutral, but if you needed to lay down, it was comfortable to do that. And that was a great bike. I rode it back and forth to work and saved tons of money. Even back in the day when fuel was cheaper, I saved tons of money riding that motorcycle. And then one morning it was really cold and I went out there. It was electric start only, inline 4-cylinder. And I went out there one morning. I didn't have a big shop like this. I had a little shed and I was keeping it in that shed. I went out there to pull it out off the center stand. That was back in the day when every big bike had a center stand. So it was great for working on it, stuff like that. Well, I went out there, hit the button, and it goes zing, and I'm like, huh, that was weird. Kind of sounds like a 350 Chevy when it's, broken a tooth on the flywheel or something. And I'm like, what was that about? So I hit it again, and that's all that bike would ever do until I ended up trading it off for a boat. I traded one of my buddies for a boat for it. And I regret that too. But back in those days, it was hard to get parts for, 10 plus year old Japanese motorcycles. And Honda would hardly even deal with you. They didn't want to work on anything. They quoted me like, back in that day, it was like $3,500 to break the case, because you had to crack the case to fix it and stuff. And I was like, man, I am not putting $3,500 in it. And it was pre-YouTube, so I couldn't just go and like figure out how to change out a starter clutch really easily. All that stuff was kept top secret. So if you don't know, if you're younger and you're watching this, back in the day, it wasn't easy to get like repair data and stuff on especially older Japanese motorcycles. It was just, and parts as well. So a lot of that stuff was, it made it to where you just, when it broke down, you either had to know somebody that had the parts or could get the parts or just sell the thing. And so anyway, the starter clutch failed on that, and I traded it off, and at least that's what I think happened. It could have been an internal flywheel or something like that. I never took it apart. I just traded it off. I couldn't even get it to push start. One time, a buddy of mine was over and we were trying to push start it. I was even dragging it down the road with my truck with a tow strap, trying to get enough speed to where the thing would push start, and it would not start back up. So I thought maybe if I could get it to start or turn that flywheel a little bit, that maybe it would re-engage and be okay. But something internal with that starter clutch went bad, and apparently it was a big deal. So my number 3 bike, and the bike that I've owned the longest out of any motorcycle, and also I'll admit one of the most fun motorcycles I've ever owned, is this one right here. It's a 1983 Honda XL 250R. I mean, it's just an awesome small bike. One of my friends was trying to learn how to ride motorcycles. In fact, there's 3 or 4 different people that have learned how to ride motorcycles on this little red Honda here. Because if I hear somebody's like trying to learn and they're fixing to go out and buy a big bike, I'll be like, hold on, wait a minute, come ride this Honda around and get comfortable on it on the grass, and then if you're good enough, we'll take it out on the street and see if this is something you're even interested in. And so not enough, but my daughter has shown a little bit of interest, and I've let her ride the thing across the yard a couple of times, but she's not real experienced on it. But I'd like to get her more experienced on it. Younger people, my wife rides this bike. That's the main reason. Besides, it's just so fun. That's the main reason that I keep this thing around. And it's so reliable. I haven't had to do anything other than changing the battery and spark plugs and oil and chains, you know, normal wear and tear maintenance things. Otherwise, it's been great. It does have a little small oil leak on the top of the valve cover, and my research indicates there is no gasket in there or a seal. What it is like just silicone. So what I need to do is pull that off sometime and put some kind, maybe it's not silicone, don't quote me on that. There's some special Honda head sealer or something you're supposed to buy and put on there, but it's probably like Permatex or something like that, high temperature Permatex, and I need to do that and stop that oil leak, because it'll drip down a little bit on the exhaust and smoke a little, and also it'll blow back on your pants when you're riding down the road. So not a whole lot, but a little bit, you know, so it's one of those things. But yeah, the bike gets 80 miles per gallon. I don't know how much horsepower it makes, probably like in the 30s maybe, I'm guessing. It's not a lot. But it's enough power to pull the front wheel off the ground. It's enough power to pull you up. You know, I'm a full-size grown adult male at, you know, 180 plus pounds. So it'll pull me up hills and pull me down the road at 60 or maybe even 70 miles an hour. I'll admit you have to really wind it up to get it up to 70 or even 80, but it's not made for top speed. It's made for trail riding and fire roads and blazing dirt roads and gravel roads, things like that. That bike is amazing for that stuff. Even going in trails, it's my favorite trail bike because I can flick it around so much better than anything else I have. So I've kept that one all this time, and I can't remember the exact year that I bought it, but I've had it for since the early 2000s. Let's say that, probably around 2004 maybe, maybe a little sooner than that even. But yeah, I've had that bike for a while, and I remember I stole it when I bought it. It was like $950 or something. I had to drive way out to a different town, pick it up, but that was back in the Auto Trader days, and I was that guy that was going out and paying $1.75 to get that Auto Trader to be the first one there if it was a good deal, and that bike was one of those good deals. So next up, we're going to talk about number 4. It was a great bike, and I rode it back and forth to work many years. It was a 1999 Suzuki 800 Intruder, and another buddy of mine at the same time, he ended up buying a Honda Shadow, and my other buddy had a Harley Davidson Road King, and we rode all over the state. I mean, hundreds of miles, just having a great time, riding all around, getting great gas mileage, seeing things we would have never seen, you know, and it was great and practical for going back and forth to work, as long as you don't have to carry a bunch of tools and stuff like that. So and as long as the weather's decent, and as long as you are aware of one thing: everybody out there in a car is trying to kill you. You have to have that philosophy. Every T intersection, you have to watch out for it like it could be your last moments on earth. So what happened with that? It was a 99 Suzuki 800 Intruder. That thing made about 55 horsepower. It was plenty fast. I never had any problems with the speed of it. One thing I didn't like was the RPMs at cruising speeds. So when I was up at 70 or 75 miles an hour, I felt like the bike was revving like, 1,000 or 1,200 RPMs higher than it should have been. It wasn't, though. That's just the way Japanese bikes that I've had experience on, they all tend to do that. They rev higher at highway speeds than your Harley Davidsons and your American motorcycles. So anyways, what happened? Well, I was riding it one day, and I remember I was thinking to myself, I think I was heading over to pay for my storage. At the time, I didn't have this big shop, so I had to go over and pay for my storage unit that I was renting. And I was like, I think I'll just ride the bike over there and drop the little envelope in the mailbox there and have me a nice ride. It was a beautiful day. It had been really hot, and finally the temperature came down enough where you could go out and kind of enjoy it. So I get out there on my 99 Intruder, and I'm running along. I wasn't going fast or anything like that. I might have sounded the pipes off a little bit in first gear just because I wanted to make sure everybody stayed away from me, but I wasn't going like ripping fast. I was going the speed limit, which was 55 miles an hour in that area. And suddenly an old woman pulled out in front of me. She didn't see me, I'm sure. It wasn't intentional, but she was in one of these Hyundai Santa Fe's, and I was over in the far right lane. It was like it's actually a 5-lane road with an emergency lane or a turning lane in the center. So there's 4 lanes on each side of the turning lane, right? So I'm way over in the far right lane, in the slow lane, because I wasn't going very fast. And suddenly she pulls out of this T intersection, probably just glanced and didn't see me or whatever. And she pulls out, and I had just enough time. I had like maybe 50 to 75 feet to react and do something to not hit her. And the problem was I didn't know if she was going to pull out and go back the opposite direction that I just came from, or if she was pulling out to go with the flow of traffic, or if she was going to stay in the inside lane or go to the other lane like a lot of people do. And she did stay in the inside lane. It looks like that's what she was trying to do. So all I could do was turn left and try to, I was trying to do 2 things: scrub speed off and slow left, swerve left as slow but as fast as necessary to not collide with the car. And it didn't work out. It just didn't work out. I hit the left front fender / front bumper cover and ripped it clean off. It was one of these plastic bumper covers. And immediately, of course, I had a death grip on the bars, and that might have been a terrible mistake, because immediately my thumbs they didn't break, but they like dislocated and were spranged, or at least one of them was sprang from going over the bars like that, trying to hang on to it. So it might have been better if I knew I was going to impact her. I might have been better off to like jump up away from it and just fly over the car. But I was terrified that I was going to T-bone that car, and it was going to be a instant impact, and it was going to kill me. So I was trying to I knew a deflective hit was much better than a dead-on hit. So I did get the bike turned enough to where I grazed her, and it's a wonder that I have a right leg and a foot, because I hit it hard, and my whole foot flung back. Simultaneously as it was instantly hitting the side of that car, although it was a glancing blow, it slowed me enough that it threw me over the handlebars. And I had one of these plastic windshields on there, and to this day I don't like those plastic windshields, because just going across the top of that windshield, it didn't rip it off, but it kind of like a really bad rug burn or something across the top, and that took a while. It was really bruised up from going across that. Some of my fingers were all mangled up and stuff, and none of them were broken though. The problem was I wasn't wearing a helmet, and I was flying through the air, and it's just like they say, you see your whole life flash before your eyes, and you're thinking, man, this is it. I'm not going to make it out of this one. I'm flying toward the hard ground, blacktop, with no helmet on, head first, and I couldn't do anything. It was happened so fast I couldn't do anything but just fly. And that would have been bad enough. I came down on this side of my face, and apparently I landed like chin first almost, and didn't break anything except for my skin, of course. My chin was pretty ripped open. I had scratches and scars all up here on my nose somehow. I think that was from where my glasses kind of dug in. I was wearing sunglasses, and when they hit the ground, they kind of dug in, and left a scar up here on my right around my eye where my nose meets my eye there. So that was a bad deal, and I was bleeding pretty badly. It ripped one of my shoes off because I was just wearing regular tennis shoes. So as soon as I started sliding across on the blacktop, it peeled. I was trying to stop, so I'm, instinctually, I didn't think about it, but I just tried to dig my foot in to slow down because the police said I slid like 75 feet on the ground or something like that. It was bad. It was pretty bad. And the worst part of all was that as you're like thinking about your whole life and everything, and you're flying through the air, you finally make impact and you're like, okay, I'm still alive. Then I'm realizing, I'm like, something is burning, and I smell it and I hear it sizzling. And what had happened was that intruder came down on top of me, and it was like laying right here across where your belt is almost. In fact, I kept that belt around for years as my lucky belt, because it would have burned me much, much worse had that belt not been there. But it ended up giving me like, a 3rd degree burn just below my gut there, where, and it could have been a lot worse. It could have landed in my nether regions and, burned the hell out of me there or something. So that could have been a terrible deal. But that's one of the worst things, is that I had these weird burns all over me. So apparently, as I was sliding down the road, that motorcycle was tangled and twisted and sliding with me. And one thing that was really great was a lot of people stepped up to the plate, and they weren't out there just filming like they do today. This was back in like 2010, 2012, something like that. 2013 maybe, I'm not exactly sure. I think it was 2010 when it happened. Honestly, it's quite a blur after that for me, because the rest of the summer I basically stayed in the house, and my wife had to treat all my wounds, and I was on like, heavy painkillers and things like that just to be able to stay alive, so it was bad. I had to go to the ER, lots of big bills from that experience and stuff like that. So nothing I recommend. Always treat that car that's up at that T intersection like they're going to pull out in front of you. Be ready, or automatically scrub off some speed if you see that situation developing, because a lot of people don't see motorcycles. Even if you wiggle back and forth, they still might not see you, especially if they're like in their 80s or their 90s and probably shouldn't be driving anymore. I'm feeling it now in my life. I'm 46 now, and I have to wear these glasses if I want to read anything off a piece of paper. It's my far vision is still good, but still, our vision starts to go and things like that. And I don't know if that was it or what, but that lady didn't see me at all, and it wrecked the rest of my summer there. I was starting a small business up, lots of things were going on that I couldn't afford the income loss. It was just a terrible, terrible deal. We had to go fight. We had to go hire a freaking lawyer to get her insurance to pay up. They didn't want to cover the price of my motorcycle and all this other stuff. But in the end, they did. And they, made me whole again to some degree, although I'll always have these scars and that memory. And for a long time afterwards, I had nightmares of falling dreams, and it was always that motorcycle wreck. I mean, for a long time, for like 3 to 5 years, I would occasionally have a falling dream, and I'd wake up and I'd be like, oh my God, it was like I was flying through the air again, about to land face first. So now, I'm not the kind of guy that just gives up on something like that. So I knew in my soul, I was like, I have to replace this motorcycle. So I didn't want another one. I wanted something to handle a little better, something that was a little more sporty that maybe could have gotten me out of that situation. So I went out and bought my number 5 motorcycle, a 2005 Suzuki Katana 750, and it had a 6-speed, so I really liked that. It was about 93 to 100 horsepower, depending on what specs you're looking at, and the thing, it was plenty fast. I know there's other bikes, leader bikes out there that would make a Katana look like, something old and antiquated, and that was one of the things I loved about it, was older technology. They had brought that 750 motor up from some motorcycle they produced back in the 90s, right? I believe the GSXR. I believe it was a GSXR motor back in the 90s, and they brought it forward and put it in the Katana. So it was an old school design GSXR 750 motor, and that thing hauled ass. It was, honestly, that's why I ended up selling that bike, was because I just thought it would kill me eventually. I thought, eventually I'm going to get out here on one of these roads that looks safe. I mean, there's places out here where I live from hill to hill where you can see 3 to 5 miles sometimes if you get way out in the country, and you'll see there's just this calling. you get almost like tunnel vision, and you just can't help it but just pin that thing down and lay down on the tank and go through all the gears until you can. I mean, it's a wonder that I didn't lose my license while I had that motorcycle. It's also a wonder that I didn't lose my life, because it was so much more powerful than anything else I'd ever been on. I was out riding with my buddy. He still had his Shadow 750 or 700, whatever it is. He still has it today. And I was out riding with him, and one day we were out on the highway, and I was just trying to like show off for him, and I knocked it down from like either 5th to 4th or 6th to 5th, and I pinned it right there on the highway. We were already going highway speeds, and with no clutch or anything, just throttle, that motorcycle started lifting and raising up off the ground. He was like, "Did you know that you pulled a wheelie next to me on the highway?" I was like, honestly, I thought that I felt the steering get a little light, but I wasn't sure, so I just, slowly let off. But he said, yeah, your wheel was up, whatever, 4 to 6 inches or whatever, at 70, 75 miles an hour as I was accelerating away. And I'm like, that's probably a little bit too much for somebody that loves horsepower as much as I do. And I would wear a helmet on that bike all the time. I bought a leather motorcycle jacket, and probably should buy some reinforced like riding pants and stuff like that. But I always wear boots when I ride now. I never ride in tennis shoes. It's just not worth it. But yeah, ended up selling that katana just because I thought it would kill me. I thought, somebody is going to pull out in a T intersection, or a deer is going to come out in the road, or I'm going to hit a bad spot of road, a pothole that I can't see, 5 miles ahead, and I'm nailing the throttle. And these roads are just in such atrocious condition. They're just not made for that sort of stuff. So it kind of scared me, I ain't going to lie. And so I sold that motorcycle. And my number 6 motorcycle is this one right over here. And I plan on keeping this one forever also. It's a 1996 model XR 650L. When I bought it, it had like 600 miles on it. The original owner bought it. He was a rich guy, and he bought like this one and 2 other smaller versions for him and his family to ride around on. And apparently, other than just riding back and forth to the store once or twice and riding around their yard, they hardly ever rode it. It does have one small dent in the gas tank, probably from storage, from falling over in storage or something like that. But it's a great bike. When I got it, it was factory gearing and all that, and I didn't really like that, so I put it more dirt gears. I can't remember the ratio, but I put a smaller front sprocket and a larger rear sprocket, and I put full bore dot legal dirt tires on it. So they're a lot knobbier than the factory tires. This thing is a dirt wheelie machine. So the reason I went over to dual sport for many years and only dual sport was because I have a theory. Little old ladies don't pull out in front of you when you're out riding on a trail. Now, they can do it on a gravel road or something like that, but even then, the damage will be less because you'll be going slower speeds. And so I love that bike. It's a little tall for me even. I'm 6 foot tall, and I have to tippy toe on it to ride it. But it makes me feel like a kid when I ride the thing. So every time I get on it, it's sort of like swinging your feet on the tailgate. It's certainly a handful just because it's so tall, but it's a great bike once you get used to the balance of it, and it's good enough to commute around on. I would guess it probably gets like maybe 50 miles a gallon, something like that. I've never really checked it. It does have a small fuel tank though. That's one complaint about it. It's real buzzy. So if you're going to ride it for a long time, it's going to feel buzzy. It might even make your hands go to sleep or something, or be the equivalent of like if you've been out weed eating for a long time, you get that tingly feeling. You can get a little bit of that because it's real buzzy on the top end. There's things you can do about that. I'm going to put some new bars on it in the future, other things to make it more comfortable and suited for me. But I love this machine. 1996 model with like 600 miles on it. It's got, 1,800 miles on it now because I ride it around quite a bit. But most of those miles are on the dirt, though, I'm proud to say. That's a great machine just for going out and getting from trail to trail and being street legal while you do it. A lot of fun. And you could commute back and forth to work on it if you were, if your trip to work is within reason. If it's 15, 20 miles, you could easily do that on this bike. If it's like 30, 60 miles, I don't know. You probably need something a little bigger and better. But yeah, I plan on keeping that bike forever. And my last motorcycle, some of you guys already know about it, but the last one I bought was this one here in the middle. It's my 2003 Harley Davidson Twin Cam 88. It's a Softail Standard. Personally, I like the Standard. Some people like the custom better because it has all the chrome on it, but that's exactly why I like the standard better, is it doesn't have all the chrome on it. I just like the old vintage look of it. It's just, honestly, in a lot of ways, the simplicity of it reminds me of my very first motorcycle, that KZ 650, the stripped nature of it, you know, because it's just a naked bike. You know, to each his own. Some people like the bikes that have the luggage and all that stuff. That's great. I've ridden Road Kings and other things like that that are fully dressed out, and they're great bikes for what they do. They're not so great around town. They're much better for highway road mileage and stuff like that. But the reason I like this one is I can do it all. I can go right around town. It's not too much of a handful, although I'll warn you, you know, it's 1,450 cc's. It's big, heavy American steel. So this thing weighs 672 pounds wet. I wouldn't want to have to pick that up by myself if I could get somebody to help me, you know, whatever. There's a way to do it. You lean up to it backwards and you can use your legs and pick it up. But you don't want to have to do that. So you don't want to drop it. And so you ride it a lot more cautiously. It's not going to accelerate as fast as the Katana or even the Intruder or even my Honda that I had, my Nighthawk S. Probably all of those have that bike beat in the acceleration department, but it still sounds really good. It runs really good. It's reliable. Older technology, carbureted. I like that, so I can work on the carburetor in the future. You know, I plan on keeping it for until I get tired of it or forever, whichever comes first. It's a great cruising motorcycle. You know, for many years after the Intruder wreck, I swore off. After the Intruder wreck followed by the Katana, and just being kind of scared off of it after that point. Just scared of other people, mainly. Scared of the idiots out there. And there are. You got to watch it, man. I mean, so many people are out there on their phones these days not paying attention to what they're doing. It's deadly. One stupid, deadly mistake like that, someone not seeing you. I mean, again, if I'd have T-boned that car, if she'd have just been accelerating 1 second faster, or if I'd have been accelerating 1 second faster, I might have T-boned her, and that would have been it. I wouldn't be here making this video for you. So this has been my experience. This Harley, it doesn't make nearly as much horsepower. In fact, it's in line. It makes the same horsepower as my very first motorcycle, but it makes a ton of torque. And what I love about this Harley, more than any other Japanese cruiser bike that I've had, is that when you're on the highway, it just kind of tractors along. It's not real. It doesn't sound like it's revving its brain out to run 70 miles an hour like every other Japanese cruiser that I've been on. Now, my Honda Nighthawk S, you know, with the 6-speed, it wasn't like that. It would cruise just fine at any speed you wanted to go, and that was a great ratio machine. But anyways, I love this Harley Davidson. It cruises along good. It's a handful, and you got to be, you know, ready to catch it and not let it fall over. And it can be tricky in like slick scenarios when you're turning around and gravel and stuff like that, or if you see gravel that's washed up on the inside of the road surface there and you make that corner a little too tight, it can get out from underneath you, and you got to watch out for that. So I like this one. It's mostly factory stock, except for the previous owner. They put this larger style tire on here, so it's more of a, you know, a fat boy style tire or size, touring bike size. And that, to me, that helps it a little bit. That Intruder that I had like a chopper front tire on it. It was super low profile, super thin, and I think that was part of the reason that it wasn't worth a darn on slick surfaces and in gravel, and I wasn't able to turn away and get out of that wreck that day. So anyhow, guys, just wanted to give you guys a rundown of my love affair with motorcycles. It's never going to end. As long as I can swing one leg over a motorcycle, I'm going to be twisting throttle. Let me know all the different motorcycles you guys have owned down in the comments. I always love reading them. And until then, guys, we'll see you next time.